So good evening, and thank you, Fred, Rose, Ann, and Susie, for inviting me to share my health story with you, and specifically Shackley's role in saving my life. Tonight will be a very abbreviated version of my story, condensing 33 years of my experiences in about 20 to 25 minutes. And in writing this story, I intentionally included some details on purpose so that you could fully appreciate the miraculous power of the human body in healing itself when given the right tools. And hopefully each of you will glean something of benefit that you can apply to your own life today that will make your life better, because that is my goal. To be sure I don't miss anything important, please bear with me. I'll have to stay close to my notes. And those of you who know me agree that I better do that. So I just go on and on. When Shackley came into my life in 1986, I lay dying on the couch in my family room with a medical alert button around my neck, nurses coming to check on me daily, and my funeral arrangements posted on the fridge. I had tried every health measure and vitamin program available to me, and none of them could reverse the progress of my terminal disease. I was resigned to impending death. I had fought the good fight, and even bought some extra years denied me by conventional medicine. I was at peace. But let's back up to the beginning for a moment. For 39 years of my life, I was a healthy, active, highly energetic person. And on March 2nd, 1977, I was involved in a minor car accident that ultimately changed my life forever. For the next 3 months, the pain in my right chest continued to worsen and spread. My right vision became distorted, and I began to lose weight and feel extremely fatigued. On June 6, 1977, I called my doctor to give me something for the pain. He insisted I come in to see him immediately. Reluctantly, that afternoon, I went and was admitted straight from his office to Mount Sinai Hospital in Cleveland with a massive right pleural effusion, massive amounts of fluid in my lung. After many chest tubes and experimental treatments for 4 weeks, I finally sustained emergency thoracic surgery on July 2nd. Infection had spread throughout my right chest. My surgeon gave me a 50-50 chance of survival. And after repairing 34 holes in my lymphatic vessels, he said he quit counting. He then scraped out all the infection that he could and rewired my ribs, and we waited. After a prolonged stay in the hospital, in the intensive care unit, and later the step-down unit, I was finally discharged home. About 6 weeks later, I was back to work as director of physical therapy, my regular job. It took over a year, though, for my body to work through the intense pain I experienced on my right side. At this time, I had no knowledge about what good nutritional supplements could do to help me heal faster. Then about 2 years later, on June 14, 1979, X-rays showed another pleural effusion, more fluid, but this time on the left side of my chest. Back to the hospital with more chest tubes, more surgery, infection, and so on. So surgery was scheduled again on July 2nd, 1979. Doctor repaired the leaks, scraped the infected lining off the lung, and rewired the rib cage. My condition was guarded for a very long time. Healing was slow. This second bout did get to me, and I decided I had to find a way to heal faster than I did 2 years earlier. I recalled that my parents had been taking vitamins for years, and my dad even bought 12 more years of his life after 2 major heart attacks by taking health foods and vitamins. It was worth a try. Soon I found my way to our one and only health store in Chardon. The owner sold me what he said were the best vitamins in his store. I left with Vital E and Instant Protein, and those were the days when you could buy Sheckley products in stores. Since the owner gave me no instructions and no follow-up, I just did what the label said and went on. After working out the severe chest and abdominal pains I experienced, with the full dose of protein, I was well on my way to feeling better. And in 2 weeks, the pain was much less, and I was stronger. It seemed I noticed significant improvements every 2 weeks for a long time. After about a year on that program, I felt so much better than I ever did after the first surgery that I decided to quit the program. Those were days when you didn't take vitamins, you know. You were odd if you did. But if only I knew then what I know now, and if only I had follow-up. Someone who cared. Then almost 3 years later, in February of 1982, I developed a persistent cold and was experiencing more than my usual breathing problems. The director of respiratory therapy next door was kind enough to give me a small oxygen tank to keep in my office. And I began to rely on it more and more. So I didn't like that, and I thought I better find a pulmonary specialist who will help me, then give me something, and I'll be all better. Won't need the extra oxygen. So I went to a specialist at Cleveland Clinic and thought I would get this great prognosis, but instead, there was no medication. Instead, I was given a very poor prognosis that I would soon not be around. In April 1979, when I brought my chest film to the clinic, I was shocked when Dr. Ahmed diagnosed me with a rare terminal disease called pulmonary lymphangioliomyomatosis. Again, the flyers are there if you want to read about it. But for short, we call it LAM, capital L, capital A, capital M. Okay. You can look it up on the internet, too. Further, the x-rays showed I was in the advanced stage of this disease. He told me to quit my job, get my affairs in order, and do whatever it was I still wanted to do in life, because within the next several months, and probably even weeks, my life would be over. Over? And I had to be on a supplemental oxygen then 24/7 for the rest of my life, whatever that was going to be. Well, I didn't want to accept that. He certainly was going to be wrong. So I contacted other pulmonary specialists around the country, went to see them. With regret, they concurred with Dr. Ahmed at the clinic. They knew of no successful treatment available anywhere. And what is this disease? A brief description is that it is almost exclusively occurring in young women. And transplants for the lungs often fail, and I was rejected even in about 1986 for a transplant because they said it would be a waste of good lungs. My diseased lymphatics would go into the lungs and it would be over. But the advanced stage of LAM that I was in is characterized by progressive shortness of breath, coughing up of blood, as well as coughing up large amounts of fluid, catalyst fluid. And patients, once they were in this stage, would usually die a few months to maybe a few years after diagnosis. And there were only about 100 known cases in the world over a 30-year period at that time. Since I was totally unwilling to accept my diagnosis and my prognosis, I decided I better do something quick. I didn't have much time left. I was determined to get well again. Where do I start? And can you believe I had already forgotten my experience with Vital E and Instant Protein from that fellow at the health food store? Well, I began investigating a variety of nutritional programs, and after 2 years of unsuccessful attempts taking every kind of product from health food stores and catalogs, I finally found something to work. It was a diet comprised of 4,500 to 5,000 calories from organic foods and freshly made juices 13 times a day. Mostly green vegetables, apples, carrots, baby calf's liver, and so on. I progressed rapidly on this program and was totally off supplemental oxygen within 6 weeks. And I'd been on it 18 to 24 hours a day by then for 2 years. It was food. I was flying around the hospital again where I worked and having a great time resuming all my previous activities, and it was wonderful. But joy ended all too soon. In June, my husband developed serious complications with his chronic disease and spent the next 2 months in the hospital and finally died September 2nd. This past year, it's been 25 years. The stress of that trauma contributed to my experience a serious, severe physical setback several months later, in November of '85. While getting ready for work that morning, on November 15th, a major lymphatic vessel in my left abdomen burst, shooting chylous fluid up the side of my body, into my head, and across my chest. I ended up in the hospital again with a problem no one knew how to resolve. It was a matter of wait and see what my body would do. After weeks of conservative treatment and bed rest, I was able to go home, though, on an oxygen mask, 24/7. Nurses came daily to check on me for the next approximately 14 months every day. And I wore a medical alert button around my neck in case of an emergency because I lived alone. Eventually, the fluid kept growing in my belly until I looked like I was about 9.5 months pregnant. As a matter of fact, when I finally got strong enough to go out of the house, people would inevitably ask me, "Oh, when is your baby due?" And I would say, "I'm not pregnant, I'm sick." And they would feel bad, and I would feel bad, and I would go home and cry. So I decided after a while I had to find a solution. I was not going to spend the rest of my life in my house. So when I would go out and they would ask me how my baby was, when I do, I would say, "Oh, pretty soon." And they would say, "Oh, good, wish you the best of luck." And I'd say, "Thank you." And then that worked. At least I could go out. But eventually, the fluid pressed so hard against my stomach that I was nauseous most of the time and could hardly eat. And I could no longer tolerate those juices, and my body just wasn't handling it anymore. So this continued for months, and while talking to a health-oriented acquaintance about what to do, I was referred by her to a nurse who healed herself from advanced crippling rheumatoid arthritis. I was impressed. Among other things, Ellie, and some of us know Ellie Cullen, started me on Vital E, Instant Protein, and Herbalife. Then I remembered my previous success with these products, but I actually made little progress this time over the next several months. My body was too ravaged with illness to rebuild on such a small program. I was still not able to handle much solid food because of the nausea, and eventually I spent almost 24/7 on the couch in my family room, too weak to walk around or do anything. It seemed as though death was not far away.